What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Jacob. Today, we're on location at Simpson's Funeral Museum, and today I'm joined by Scott Simpson. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jacob.
Of course. Now, we just got done taking a tour here, and I really enjoyed it. But Scott, to start off, can you tell us how the museum got started?
I sure will, yeah. And just for anyone listening, we are located in a small town called Chatham, 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 Virginia, about 15 miles north of a town called Danville, Virginia, right on the Virginia-North Carolina state line. Simpson Funeral Museum was founded in 2014 by my father, Bill Simpson. He is a licensed funeral director and embalmer in the state of Virginia. He graduated from Cincinnati Mortuary School in 1971, and we went into the casket business in the early 1980s. We own a hardwood casket manufacturing company in North Carolina called Mastercraft Casket Company. But at the bottom line is we love funeral service. We believe very strongly in what funeral service stands for, what it represents, what it means to a community, what it means to each family who loses a loved one. And opening Simpson Funeral Museum, we wanted to pay tribute to the honorable profession of funeral service, because we believe it does take a very special person who decides to become a licensed funeral director. It takes a very special person to do that, because every day when they are at work, they are walking a family through a very difficult time. And we think and believe that it takes a special person to be able to do that and to want to do that. And we are so grateful that there are people in the world who choose to do that. Just like there have to be hospitals and doctors and nurses for babies to be born into the world, there has to be funeral professionals to help a family when someone leaves the world. And we wanted the museum to be a place of beauty, a place that people can come and learn a little something about funeral history, specifically in the United States. And we wanted it to be a place that people can come and enjoy. We didn't want it to be depressing. We didn't want it to be sad or dreary or morbid. But we wanted it to be educational, but we also wanted to pay tribute to the profession itself.
Awesome. Now, is there an item that you would like to own and put here in the museum that you haven't gotten, or basically, is there an item that you want to put on display?
Wow. Okay. Let me think for a second, because it's funny you bring that up. Along those lines, the museum we are a nonprofit organization, which means we rely totally on donations just to do the basic things like pay the normal bills that any organization pays every year. So saying that, we do not have a lot of money to be able to buy display items. I wish that we did. A lot of the things that we have on display are either donated to us or collectors, funeral antique collectors, sometimes will partner with us to allow us to show one of their pieces for maybe a year or a couple of years or 6 months. So that's really the main way that we have the things on display to display. If there was one piece that I could buy for the museum, what would it be? It would probably be a national seamless copper deposit of our own, because the one that we have on display belongs to a funeral home up in Washington, D.C., who was very kind to let us borrow it to display. But that casket is one like Elvis Presley's buried in, John Wayne's buried in, FDR's buried in, just to name a few. seamless copper deposit caskets are probably the most collectible antique funeral item. So that would be it.
All right, yeah. Now, and speaking of celebrities, would you get some celebrity caskets that's like replica? Can you like name a few of those?
Sure, yeah. We have a hardwood casket just like President Reagan and Nancy Reagan are buried in. Those caskets were made by a company called Marcellus Casket Company up in Syracuse, New York. It's made out of South African ribbon grain mahogany. It's called a 700 masterpiece. So we have a 700 masterpiece on display. We have one just like Marilyn Monroe is buried in. The company that made that metal casket is called Belmont, and that's called a Belmont masterpiece. So we have one of those on display. We have another presidential casket, one just like President John F. Kennedy is buried in. That also was made by Marcellus Casket Company in Syracuse, New York. There's one variation in difference between the one President Kennedy is in and the one that we have, but it's for the most part, it's the same casket. And then, of course, we have the seamless copper deposit on loan that we have on display that Elvis, John Wayne, FDR, to name a few, were buried in. And then, of course, really a big showpiece, not necessarily from the celebrity standpoint, but in terms of the original metallic coffin, the first ever made, dating back to 1848, made by Mr. Fisk, F-I-S-K. Mr. Fisk, in 1848, was a cast iron wood stove maker, and he applied for and received his patent for what he called his mummiform in 1848. And it's a very interesting thing to Google. Just Google Fisk, F-I-S-K, Fisk iron coffin, and you can see lots of different articles online about the origin and history of the Fisk.
All right, now, and we're sitting here on the couch, and I can see a carriage and a hearse over there.
Yes.
But when people comes to take your tour, and what are they expected to see?
Awesome question. Well, when you come in the door, you're going to see two big showpieces. We have a horse-drawn carriage hearse that dates back to 1876. And then you're going to see a 1941 Packard Henny hearse. Those are kind of our two big showpieces, and you can actually see those by looking in our front windows, standing on the sidewalk. So just in case, oh, and by the way, we are open by appointment only. We don't have regular hours that we're open to the public. We do everything by appointment only. And we have a Facebook page called Simpson Funeral Museum Facebook page that has our email address and our phone number for the contact information. Just wanted to mention that while it was on my mind. But in addition to the big showpieces, the Packard and the horse-drawn, you'll see our original tin ceilings and our original hardwood floors dating back to 1898, which is the year that this building was built on historic Chatham's Main Street. You'll see two big, beautiful murals over the two fireplaces. You'll walk through and you'll see 8 or 9 different caskets. You'll see 5 or 6 different coffins. You'll see our antique embalming room area. You'll see just any number of antique collectibles. We actually have the largest collection under one roof of what's known as funeral no parking signs. We have roughly 30 to 35 different antique funeral no parking signs, all different variations and years of manufacture. We just have a little bit of everything for anyone that maybe from the oddity and curiosity perspective. We get a lot of people that come just for the oddity and curiosity bit. And then, of course, we have some who are really interested in just the history of funeral service. But yeah, we get a little bit of everybody in here.
All right. Now, next question is for people that wants to come here to take your tour, and how can they reach you?
Yeah. Well, 2 ways. they can either call our museum landline telephone, and that number is area code 434-432-1085, or they can email us at Simpson, 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 the letter F as in funeral, the letter M as in museum. So Simpson FM at Comcast.net.
All right. Now, my next question is, and how many people do you think always has come here and toured the museum?
Great question. We opened in 2014, so next year will be our 10-year anniversary. And I think we last counted, because we keep a register book by the front door of the museum, and we let that stay up front for the calendar year, and we keep each register book from each year. And I think the last time we counted was a year ago, and I think if I remember correctly, over 3,000. We've had over 3,000 visitors. For small town Chatham, Virginia, to have had 3,000 visitors come through our doors, we think is a pretty good feat.
Oh, yeah. And do you think that your museum here is like the big attraction in Chatham?
Well, it is probably certainly one of the attractions. Chatham is the county seat for the county, which is called Pittsylvania County. So Chatham, about one block up from us here on Main Street, from the museum on Main Street, is the courthouse. So the courthouse is quite popular, especially on Mondays. So other than being the county seat, the town of Chatham also has two private schools here. We have Hargrave Military Academy, which is a boys' prep school, and then we have a private girls' school called Chatham Hall. So between Chatham Hall, Hargrave Military Academy, and the town being the county seat, after those three things, probably the museum would rank. Yeah.
All right. And we talked about this on the tour, the difference between a casket and a coffin.
Yes.
Can you tell us the difference between those two?
I sure can. Lots of people use the word casket and use the word coffin interchangeably, as if they were synonyms, they were synonymous. And really, for the most part, they are, but there is a technical difference between a casket and a coffin. A casket, the sides of the casket are parallel. If the sides of the piece are parallel, then that is a casket. But if the sides of the piece are flared, meaning they either flare in or flare out, or flare up and flare down, and they're not parallel, then that is a coffin. And your kind of your normal standard coffin shape is wide at the shoulders, narrow at the feet, like you would maybe see in a vampire movie or in an old black and white Western movie or TV show.
All right. Oh, you also got T-shirts.
Yes. Yes.
And you want to tell the people about the T-shirt?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I am a big T-shirt guy. That's just kind of I'm very comfortable in a T-shirt. If I can wear a T-shirt and a pair of jeans or a pair of shorts, I'm perfectly comfortable. So I wanted to make sure that the museum had some really good merchandise, some good merch, and so. As I mentioned earlier, the museum is a nonprofit organization, so the sale of each T-shirt goes directly to support the museum in its funding, and we have two different styles of T-shirt, museum T-shirt. Both of them say Simpson Funeral Museum, Chatham, Virginia, but one of them has an hourglass design with wings, and that is derived from the Latin phrase memento mori. Memento mori means death comes for us all, but that's not in a morbid way of thinking. That is just in a reminder, in a way as a reminder to tell people, hey, one day this is all going to end, so make the most out of your life each day. And then our other T-shirt has the Fisk metallic coffin design on it with a little skull in the viewing portal in the window on it. But yeah, I'm really proud of our T-shirts because, as I said, I'm a T-shirt guy. I go to lots of rock concerts and heavy metal concerts and things, and so one thing I always do every concert I go to, I buy a T-shirt from the show, and I kind of wanted to incorporate that type of vibe into the museum fundraising T-shirts.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, we talked earlier about it's about your Facebook page.
Yes.
For people that's listening, and how is your Facebook page again?
Yes. You on Facebook, it is Simpson Funeral Museum. That is our Facebook page. And I usually refer people to that because we did have an actual website for the museum, but during 2020, as if 2020 wasn't bad enough with COVID and lockdowns and such, sometime during 2020, our museum website was hacked and literally it just disappeared. So now, as a point of reference, I always just refer people to our Facebook page. There are like 200 photos in the photo album on our Facebook page that you can scroll through and see lots of different pictures from the museum and different display items. But yeah, it's just simply Simpson Funeral Museum.
All right, yeah. And which I guess is it for the podcast. I've asked all my questions.
Okay.
So Scott, I want to thank you.
Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, yeah, of course. And that's it for this episode of Conversations with Jacob. Tune in next week for another episode. Until then, God bless, and we'll catch you in the next one.